Well, good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who might not be familiar with Teck Resources, we're a global mining and metals company focused on producing the metals essential for economic development and electrification. And in our business, that's primarily copper and zinc. But as I'll discuss shortly, I'm also going to touch on some of the other strategic metals that often don't get as much attention. In our business, we have producing mines here in the US, in Canada, in Chile, and Peru, and major development projects across the Americas. But the bottom line is, the focus of our business is on the metals that matter. The metals that matter for security, for energy security, for economic security, and more to the point of this conference, national security. And I'd like to briefly share a perspective in what is often an underappreciated aspect of national security, a safe and secure supply chain for critical minerals. You know, the situation today is perhaps best described by the two B words in the title for this session, backbone and bottleneck. I'm going to start with the backbone. I think it's well understood that national security infrastructure depends on metals. In fact, in my industry, the mining industry, people often say, if you can't grow it, you have to mine it. And you know, if you think about it, it's really true. If you look around, all of the products that our everyday life depends on are often rooted in mining. And it's not just the obvious things like steel for our cars and for our ships, but also copper and specialty metals for electricity generation, transmission, and storage. And increasingly, when we think about these industries that are really at the heart of driving our economy, it's things like artificial intelligence, drones, and night vision optics are all incredibly dependent on the metals that we produce. In our case, it's well known that zinc is required to galvanize steel, but many people are not familiar with some of the byproducts of zinc processing, such as antimony and germanium, which are required for a range of defense applications, including nuclear, fiber optics, and thermal imaging. These critical minerals are truly that, critical, not just for economic security and energy security, but also national security. And 50 years ago, if I was speaking to you, the United States and their allies would have absolutely dominated their production. Which brings me to the bottleneck. Today, the US and its allies have lost that dominance position, and I could speak at length about some of the reasons why, but what really matters is where we are today. Now, after decades of concerted investment building domestic processing capacity, China unquestionably dominates the global critical mineral space. They control in the range of 40 to 100% of global capacity for virtually all of the essential metals that we depend on. And there is significant risk in being dependent on solely one counterparty, a risk that was highlighted by China recently banning exports to the US of germanium and antimony, amongst other metals. Addressing that challenge is not going to happen on its own. China has a 30-year head start in this space, and catching up is going to require real action on a number of fronts. And I'm going to share three. First, and most simply put, right now it can take 20 years to permit a new mine in Canada or the US. Clearly that needs to be faster. And to be fair to governments, we are increasingly seeing focus on addressing this issue. But until we see those timelines come down, there's still an awful lot of work that needs to be done in that space. Second, investment. If we want to compete with China in this space, it's going to take both public and private investment. Because here again, we are very far behind. In 2023 alone, China invested more than $20 billion directly in the mining and metals space. This makes it challenging for Western producers to expand production when competing against state actors, particularly actors who have different investment timelines, lower cost of capital, and frankly often don't require the same levels of returns that Western investors would expect. For the Western mineral industry to catch up, it will require government support and partnership. That includes infrastructure and access to resources, as well as investments to build new processing capacity for metals that would otherwise be uneconomic, but are essential for national security. Third, we need to leverage our strengths. The fact is we should be good at this. Here in North America, we have the mineral resources, we have the skilled people, and we have the capital markets to develop these critical minerals. Let me illustrate what this could look like with a couple examples from my own company. First, on permitting. In Alaska, we operate the Red Dog mine, which has this distinction of being one of the world's largest zinc mines and the largest critical mineral mine in the United States. It's also operated in partnership with Native Alaskans, providing billions in revenues to Indigenous peoples, to communities, and creating jobs and economic opportunity in Northwest Alaska. We are currently working to extend the mine life at Red Dog by developing new mineral deposits. And in November, we received a critical permit to build the first 11 miles of road to that new deposit. It's the first step in mine life extension. But just getting that permit took 6 years. 6 years for 11 miles of road. If we're going to continue to develop zinc mines in North America or in the US, clearly we need to move faster on permitting. Second, investment. In recent years, North American governments have invested in downstream manufacturing, but we lag in support for upstream mines and mineral processing. With state-backed actors investing billions every single year, the playing field for Western companies is lopsided. Unlocking our country's mineral potential will require public investment, particularly investment in infrastructure to access and process these resources. Third, leveraging our strengths. As I mentioned, China has a 30-year head start, and the West will not catch up overnight. But we can start by taking advantage of the capacity we have. For example, again in our case, the ore we process from the Red Dog mine in Alaska is rich in rare critical minerals. It is refined at Trail Operations in Western Canada, one of the largest zinc smelting and refining facilities in North America. There it's turned into zinc metal and lead and specialty metals including indium, antimony, and germanium for use by over 100 customers in 37 US states. This is part of the backbone of US mineral supply. Last year, we submitted a proposal to the Government of Canada and the US Department of Defense about expanding germanium production. The project has the potential to safely and securely meet annual germanium needs for the United States. And that's not all we're doing, but the two projects I mentioned at Red Dog and Trail alone would strengthen supply chain security and reduce or eliminate the need to rely on imports from overseas. Again, we're just one company, but I think it illustrates that there are opportunities to solve these challenges. They exist, and it's up to us to grab them. And we need to get moving now. Even if we speed things up, permitting and building new mines and processing facilities will still be measured in years. So we need to start today. We need to start accelerating permits, investments, and partnerships to achieve critical mineral security. Thank you, and I'm now looking forward to the panel discussion that will follow.